Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Holl. There's no shortage of excellent places to drink in New York City, and on this episode, I'm glad to be talking with Karla and James Murray, the photographers behind a new book about Gotham's greatest bars. First, please go visit allaboutbeer.com. There, you can find original articles, reviews, news, insights, and other podcasts. Listen to shows like Brewer to Brewer and the All About Beer podcast simply by searching All About Beer wherever you listen to shows. You can also follow All About Beer on Instagram, Threads, X, and Facebook at All About Beer. And to keep up with all of the smoked beer news and releases, make sure you check out This Week in Rauk Beer by searching the group on Facebook or follow at TW Rauk Beer on X, Threads, and Instagram. Glassware and apparel is available on allaboutbeer.com/merch. This show and all of the work we do, it's supported by you. Please go visit patreon.com/allaboutbeer. A few dollars goes a long way to help fund writers, photographers, creators, and editors. And if you'd like to learn more about advertising and supporting All About Beer, please email us at info@allaboutbeer.com. Even though it's a lousy beer town, I still love drinking in New York City. There are endless choices, each with their own vibe, often being an extension of a neighborhood or an era. There are, of course, classic locations that are beloved by tourists, and then a bunch of under-the-radar ones known only to neighbors. It's impossible to chronicle them all, but a new book photographed by the married Karla and James Murray enshrines 30 of the city's greatest bars in their new book. It's called Great Bars of New York City, 30 of Manhattan's favorite storied drinking establishments. It's published by Prestel and will be released on September 10th, 2024. James and Karla Murray have devoted themselves to using their work to help preserve and support the mom and pop shops that form the heart and soul of New York. Last year, they released a similar book called Storefront NYC, photographs of the city's independent shops, past and present. For this book, they paired up with culture writer Dan Dow, who gives each spot the write-up it deserves. From the process to the feel of each place, to its importance in the drinking culture of everyday life, we get into it all. Here's our conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed looking through this book and reading the descriptions and remembering, sometimes in a fuzzy way, of many nights spent at a good majority of these bars. And I like them for my own reasons, but I'm curious from your standpoint, what makes a great bar and worthy of inclusion in this book?
Well, one of the reasons that we chose the quote, if you want to know about a culture, spend a night in its bars, in our introduction, that was by Ernest Hemingway, is that to us, I mean, we've always been interested in and documented small, like what we call the neighborhood mom and pop shops in New York City, but including its bars. And for us, the bars were always a place where like they were really the heart of New York City because it was a home away from home and also like a place where you couldn't be alone together, I guess you could say.
Yep.
James.
Right. And it has to have a certain being photographers, first and foremost, we were always attracted to the exterior patinas and how it appeared on the street. And then this book is the first time our photography will be featured where we shot inside the location. So the look and feel a certain historic value and,
cultural value.
Yeah, that's what makes a good bar. As soon as you walk in the door, and that's why our first photo always kind of was an overview.
Right, besides the exterior.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because it's just a place where people from all walks of life, I mean, can mingle together. I mean, different bars, they may be known for different things. Like, okay, this is like Rudy's, your quintessential dive bar, the working man's bar, if you will, where, I mean, really, to us, Rudy's in particular is the last affordable bar in New York City where you can still, for a couple of bucks, get a beer and a free hot dog. I mean, it's just really an amazing, welcoming place. And it's, even though it has its roots as a working man's bar, there's all walks of life have been there, from Frank Sinatra
The
to
Slash.
right. So it just and in a place like New York, most people, when they see, like, if a celebrity happens to go to one of these like neighborhood places, most people will leave them alone. They're savvy enough to say, okay, they're just people too, and they should be able to enjoy, their time in a bar without being, bombarded.
Yeah, I was remembering Shark Bar or Spring Lounge, and some time that my wife spent before we were married, living in that neighborhood and being there at all hours of the day and seeing, some of those celebrities, some of those famous people, and it was just, you know, that unspoken rule of don't bother them. It's you wouldn't bother a normal patron. So why are you going to bother, somebody because they're known outside of those walls? But it's so interesting to me of this definition of great, and in some cases you have to experience it in person. But to have something like Jimmy's Corner in the same book as the King Cole Bar, it really sort of strikes me, having spent many hours at both. I have to be in different moods to be there, or just want to drink, and it's nearby. Um, but put together, like, some of the fancier places, versus some of the just, the everyday things, right? Because Jimmy's is great. Like, I guess let me phrase it this way, right? There's a lot of people who will go through Times Square, right? Visitors, and they'll go to the Olive Garden, or they'll go to one of the flashy places in Times Square itself. But you walk 2 blocks away from it, and there's Jimmy's Corner, which I think most tourists, if they're even on that block, are going to walk by kind of in a hurry, and they're missing this gem. Whereas, King Cole Bar is Instagrammable, and it's one of those places where if you're in that neighborhood, you want that scene, you want to be seen. How do places like that exist together in the same book?
Well, we felt like it was very important to have not only these historic bars that maybe are a little bit more well known, and have a grouping of some of these neighborhood places like Jimmy's Corner, like Rudy's Bar, right. And because
that's
really,
New York,
right? That's well said, James. That is New York. I mean, New York has always been a melting pot of different cultures, different nationalities, different walks of life, and all coming together. I mean, and the bar kind of brings them all together. So even though you might gravitate to one, kind of place versus right. the other, I mean, and also depending on, your dress code, because like a place like King Cole Bar,
yeah,
you probably wouldn't go inside
after work if you're working in the street, or
right, in your let's say Carhartt coveralls, where that would be perfectly acceptable at Jimmy's Corner or Rudy's Bar, or really many of the places that I think you might receive a look right. At a place like
it's
King
great
Cole
you
Bar.
mentioned that, because we definitely wanted that juxtaposition of something that's like hyper local, neighborhoody, like Parkside Bar and Grill, and,
right, the Parkside Lounge,
versus the Campbell apartment stuck inside Grand Central. That was like right from the get-go. In our publisher was really understanding of that. We wanted to have the beauty represented in both ways.
Right. We didn't want to make it a book just about like neighborhood bars, or make it a book just about like the flashy, fancier tourist laden places. We wanted to make it a book for everyone. So anyone that looked through it, if they've been to New York or dreamed of coming to New York, maybe they've never even been to New York City, but it's their dream to go to New York and have a drink at one of the bars. I'm sure through the pages you will find at least one place right. where you would feel wow, I would really like
I feel
to,
home here. Yeah.
right, I feel like this would be my place to visit.
How much does longevity for a place, or how much did it when you were putting this list together? How much did longevity play into its ultimate selection? I think of something like Old Town or McSorley's, again, of which I've spent many hours in, and McSorley's, I think, is one of those. It's always on everybody's list. It's, you have to go visit it. You have to go, for the history. Nobody really goes for the beer. You're going for the ambiance of it. And I think that part of the reason that that bar is famous is just because it's been around for as long as it's been around. So, yeah, how much did a bar's age play in determining its spot on the list?
It definitely played a large factor. I mean, a significant factor, I would say. A lot of the places of the 30 that we included have longevity. And it was important for us to also include places that were still in business, because in the past, we have photographed bars that, we wish we could have included in the book, but they were no longer in business. The point of this book really is to celebrate ones where you can still go today. I mean, maybe, like I said, you've never been to New York City, you have the book in your hand and you can say, I'm going to, here's the address, I'm going to go check this place out.
Right.
So it was a very large factor. However, we did include some so-called newer, places. Nothing that was only open for a few months or a year. Like, we also we wanted to ensure that the places would actually still be, as much as we can decide that, because that's really not our, that's in God's hands, whether they're still going to be in business, when the book finally comes out, because, the photography was completed a year ahead of time. I mean, for, purposes of putting the book together design-wise and everything like that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I would say a large portion of the places have, a great longevity.
Yeah, and longevity sort of plays into that great as well. I mean, there's numerous factors that keep a place open, but if it stays open for as long as some of these bars have, there has to be a reason behind it, and that's that people are still putting money in the register every night. You mentioned some of the bars that you had shot that are no longer there, and in the introduction, you brought up a bar that I miss dearly in Chumley's.
Oh yes, of course. I
yeah,
love, Noel Chumley's, and it's sad. It's always sad to us when we lose, especially a very historic place like Chumley's, and Lenox Lounge for that matter too. That hit us very hard when Lenox Lounge closed. We never thought that it would close. We always thought
that's when the project's photography aspect became a race against time.
Right, because we initially, this project really goes back to
our storefront work.
Right, our work documenting the mom and pop storefronts of New York City. And that, although we began that project in the late 1990s, it was really, we stepped up in earnest in the 2003, 2004. I would say we took a large bulk of photos, still with 35 millimeter film, but that was because we began to notice that they were disappearing, and mainly because of high rents.
Right.
When the building that the store wasn't located in, or bar or whatever,
right,
was not owned by the person who also owned the business, they were already in danger of closing.
Yeah. And that was during that era of who was the mayoral candidate of the rent is too damn high?
Oh, yeah, we have a photo.
Oh, what was his name?
It'll come to me at some point, but that was during that era, of course. Yeah.
reality, like right outside our apartment.
Yeah, like basically on the street, like on a street corner, like he would just have, hold these little rallies. And, we live in the East Village. So, the East Village has undergone, lots of changes. I mean, we've lived in the same apartment now for over 25 years.
Yeah.
And, yeah, there's so many places, really, even in our own neighborhood, that we wish we had documented, but we didn't because we took them for granted.
Yeah. And that's sort of the thing about a major city like New York, and I think you kind of touched upon this a little bit, of you can have a storefront there one day or a bar there one day that you're just sort of used to, and then it's gone. And it can be very quickly forgotten if you've never gone in, or it's replaced by something else very, very quickly. So I love the historical element to this. One of the things that I was really struck about with the book is there's no people in it. And every time that I've been in one of these bars, it's always been crowded. The stools have been filled. It's standing room only. It's, you're only looking at one particular corner, depending on where you're situated in the bar. And I loved the starkness of the empty bar and seeing it the way that somebody would when they go in to open up every morning. And just I guess like the nakedness of it. Really, I spent a lot of time sort of poring over it. What was it like to shoot in an empty bar? And I'm imagining that was a conscious choice as well.
Absolutely. It was definitely a conscious choice. And there were a few reasons for it. Number one, we wanted the bar, like the interior of the bar, to be the star of the photo. Meaning, like, if you had a person, say like in an art overview shot, because basically we had like kind of a theme of how the book was laid out. We would show the exterior.
Like when you first walk in.
Right, so you could see what it looks like from the outside.
Like you said, opening the bar.
You open the doors, and then there you are. So like in the case of, like, say, Spring Lounge, Rudy's Bar and Grill, Milano's, which are the 3 bars in the book, which open at 8 a.m.
Oh, I'm well aware. Yeah.
Because there's actually a line. I mean, at Spring Lounge, I think we got there at 7:30 in the morning, and there was a guy already waiting.
Yeah.
We knocked on the door, and Jen let us in, and he wanted to come in with us. And Jen's like, it's a regular. So Jen's like, no, you're going to have to come back at 8.
Yeah.
So we wanted to, when you have a person in the photo, people's eye generally will go to the person or persons, and maybe they don't notice the details of the interior, because there's a lot of details that a lot of people may or may not have noticed every time they go in the bar, especially because, like you said, it's crowded when you go in.
Sure.
So you might not have a chance to see all these wonderful things, the details of the mahogany of the bar, like the carvings of it, right. the floor even. That there's hand-laid tile floor. Or think to look up at the ceiling. That there's
a lot of pressed tin,
exactly. Or McSorley's, the sawdust on the floor. But okay, maybe you don't notice those turkey wishbones hanging from the gas lamp.
What was really interesting, just really quickly about the wishbones, though, it reminded me of when Bloomberg was mayor, because those used to have a really thick coating of dust on them. And Bloomberg went in there and was appalled by it, and had his health department go and like force them to clean it, which took away such charm from the place. Anyway, that's
we couldn't agree more. And we have photos of the interior coated with dust, and maybe all like that. But
it was gravity defying dust too. It just. It was like it was like Churchill's cigar ash, just hanging there. It was wonderful. Yeah. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you when you brought up the wishbones. But it's it really is fun to look at all of this and to see a lot of similarities as well, for a lot of, especially these historic bars. You're going to see police patches. You're going to see Yankee paraphernalia. There's just to sort of borrow a phrase from one of my grandparents, like there's a lot of crap on the walls.
Exactly. Exactly.
But it's purposeful, is because it's organic. It comes over time. It's not like a place that opens up, where they're just throwing tchotchkes on the wall to make it feel homey. This is real.
Right, like the Ear Inn, a lot of those
A
so-called
loaf bar. Yeah.
are actually things that were excavated during the renovation that they found that date back to God knows when, like really shows kind of the history of New York, and the fact that there was not, like, that was the end of New York City. Like the steps outside the Ear Inn was the water.
Yeah.
And what struck us also was some of the photographs. It's like, you look at the photographs and it's an individual's little square of immortality hanging on there. And, like older photos and
right. Or that, like, for instance, we included the old prices, like at Milano's.
Right.
You can see, oh, wow. Can you imagine going to eat there? And you could get, what's called the tripe sandwich, because that's kind of fallen out of favor.
A little bit. Yeah.
Or kidneys and 2 vegetables, 30 cents. Yeah.
And that's a good example. The Milano's with the pictures of the Kennedys and right next door to patrons. And it has that same feel as the whole book, really.
Yeah. And there is sort of this thread. I don't know if it's a color palette. I don't know if it's, I'm not great on photography terms, but there really is this sameness to these bars, but that they're still individuals. But they're a lot of them seem to be cut from the same cloth. Was there a thread that you saw as you were putting this together, or after you put it together, of, I don't know, hospitality, welcomingness? Is it a neighborhood vibe? Is there, I guess it kind of goes back to that original question of what makes a great bar, but is there, after this was done, you made your selections, you put everything in there, was there a thread that you could see that ran through all of these places?
Oh, certainly. It's a home away from home feeling, like Karla touched upon. A place where you could go to a crowded bar and all be alone and out of your apartment together. That's really the thing that struck us about all of them.
And they were all very, very, very welcoming. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, the owners, because obviously when you're doing interior photography of this nature and generally going before the business even opens for the day, of course we got the blessing from the owners, but it was, they were all like so
proud.
Proud and just wonderful about being included in this project. And I find that in general, like we've always felt that welcoming feeling. Like I feel that New Yorkers, I'm born and bred New Yorker, that a lot of people say that New Yorkers aren't friendly or rude or something like that. And I find it to be the complete opposite. That it's not true at all. That they're welcoming, and they're so proud of their establishment. I mean, like Gary Egan at Pete's Tavern. I mean, during the pandemic, when the bar was closed, he actually had him and his staff repainted some of the original details in the bar itself, because that's one of the places we had photographed that we rephotographed it for this book. Like most of the photos are all taken in 2023. We went back there and he did like the gold leaf like around on the long bar, and I mean the amount of work that went into it. So he used the time to like do an update, stay true to the historic nature of it, but just updated it to bring it back to its glory days. And the amount of work and the pride that went into that, it just amazing. I mean, he was there when we were doing the photography, and he made sure that like every stool was like, I mean, almost to the point where like, okay, took a ruler and just said, okay, we want every stool like X amount of inches apart from one another. Like we want it like it's going to be perfect, like everything perfect, so I mean, it's so nice when someone's so involved and so proud of their establishment and the history, and it makes our job much easier.
Yeah.
Well, sure.
Reflect the care that goes into this place.
Right. The love and I guess you could say stewardship, because a place filled with so much history, it deserves an owner that truly loves it. And we felt very welcome at every place, and really I feel like the customers are too, because that's just that's like an overall thread in the book, that every place is welcoming.
I like that. Yeah, it's and I like that stewardship as well, because so many of these places have either generationally changed hands or owner-wise changed hands, where people seem to respect the history that came before it and try to work to leave it better than they found it. And I like hearing that. I'm curious if during the work on this book you got a read on how COVID may or may not have changed the bar scene in New York.
I mean, I know that it was a difficult time.
Oh yeah.
We were in New York City throughout the pandemic, and we saw firsthand the devastation of the policies. McSorley's adapted,
Mm-hmm.
and they had they built this like little outside area. Even before they built the outside area, the bartenders were standing literally
in the doorway.
Yeah.
And you would go there and they would just hand a drink to you, and Beauty Bar, I remember they had to buy like a hot dog
Yep.
cooker, warmer, whatever.
Serve food.
Right, because you had to serve food. That's, because that's a bar that didn't have food like on its menu. Like McSorley's, they've always had their saltines and liverwurst.
Remember we walked when the COVID first started, the pandemic, and they were closing everything up. On a Saturday night, we walked by McSorley's, and we were showing on our YouTube channel the first. I mean, I can't ever remember the padlock on a Saturday night.
Right.
And it really it was sad. I mean, it was depressing. It was.
I mean, the streets were empty. I remember that night too, because it was raining, and which like added to us, like for the patina of like taking a photograph or a video. Like there's nothing better than when it's wet.
And all the reflections are out there.
Right. I mean, it's a beautiful time to take a photo, as long as you don't mind your equipment getting wet.
Yeah.
And then we walked around the corner to one of our favorite pizza places, and I can't describe the vibe. Like, me and Karla have been in New York through 9/11. New York has been through a lot. And there was such uncertainty at that time that, wow, they can close all this down.
Right. With 9/11, there was a defiance.
There was a defiance, right? A chin up, chest out. We're going to right to this, and no one's taking New York away from us. And
the bars stayed open. I mean, it's one of the very few times the TV went on at McSorley's. Yeah.
We lost power. We lost power from the superstorm, Hurricane Sandy.
Yep.
The bars are open.
and, you know, because everything below 14th Street, there was, well, I think it was 34th Street. There was no
At first,
power.
right.
So places that stayed open, I mean, it's, you know, like they used the cash register. I mean, at some of the bars was like the hand cranked, you know, like the old national
Manual cash
register.
Yeah.
You know, not all
Not
the places
computer,
have them,
right.
but you know, like some of the old places, and they can still, you know, operate, and they, you know, just lit by candle, like, you
Yeah,
know,
we're New Yorkers.
like-
We're gonna.
like old times.
We're not going anywhere. You're not changing us. We're not.
Exactly.
And then that one particular night when McSorley's was padlocked.
Right. There was an uncertainty. I mean, because, I mean, McSorley's, okay, you know, the family, the Marr family, now De La Haba, you know, they own the building, so they have that security. But that being said, that's not, you know, that's not we've seen places close where the family owns the building.
Right.
Still have to close. Like, the bottom line is businesses need business to
Right.
stay open.
Right.
And we were genuinely very worried. I mean, luckily, all the places that we photographed, they made it through. You know, talking about the, you know, Superstorm Sandy, like we can you know,
Bridge Cafe.
go to yeah, well, the Bridge Cafe never reopened, sadly. I mean, maybe that's a place that we would have included in the book, had they
Down in the seaport.
you know, down in the seaport. But you know, we luckily, you know, have the Paris Cafe, which I think it was like 11 feet of water
In the building.
in the bar itself. I mean, and they had to you know, refurbish, you
Yeah,
know,
the
like that
original
original beautiful bar
And the woodworking around the bar.
right. So I mean, it just, going back to answer your question about the pandemic and that general feel, photographing the places and revisiting them again in 2023, we could see that, again, I think it's the stewardship, the owner, the pride of the owners, you know, year in too, they were inundated with water as well. That they were just so like, we gonna make it work. You know, it's gonna be a make it work moment, you know, and we're gonna get through this, whether it was through crowdfunding, because a lot of them did turn to crowdfunding, or just, you know, taking out loans or doing whatever they had to do, like what New Yorkers are known for, right?
Yeah.
You know, getting through the tough times and coming out the other side.
It is such a fun book to look through and to read through and to inspire me to leave the house again, which I haven't done for quite some time, to go out and drink again and to visit these places and look for these details myself when I'm there. But thank you for doing this book. Thank you for documenting this important part of New York history. It's so much fun, and I hope everybody goes and gets a copy. It comes out on September 10th. It's called Great Bars of New York City. And James and Karla Murray, thanks for being on the show this week. Thanks for doing this and for taking the time.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. Where
do you like to drink in New York? It's the Blind Tiger, right? Me too. But if you have someplace else, tell me about it. You can email me. It's John Holl, that's JOHNHOLL @allaboutbeer.com. And next week, we're going to keep going with the bar and pub conversation as I welcome Adrian Tierney Jones, the longtime writer in the beer space, who has a new book about British pubs. Comments, guest suggestions, you can do all of that by emailing me. It's John Holl, that's JOHNHOLL @allaboutbeer.com. A reminder, please go visit allaboutbeer.com. There you can check out the podcast page, the merch page, and read great new content, as well as the archives going back to 1979. You can also follow All About Beer on social media @allaboutbeer. And if you're interested in supporting journalism in the beer space, email us at info@allaboutbeer.com or go to patreon.com/allaboutbeer. Don't forget, All About Beer has a podcast channel. Search and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday, and the BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. And don't forget to check out probrewer.com each week for original articles from the All About Beer team. As for this show, Nate Schweber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Holl. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.